Hey, everybody. Welcome to the HireMyVA Team and Business Building Podcast, where we help you to reclaim your freedom through hiring and thriving with virtual assistants without breaking the bank, without breaking your bank. You hear the guy laughing at me in the background. Actually, I made a mistake. This is going to be perfect for this episode.
Oh, good point. Yes.
I like that, how I recovered.
Oh, that was awesome, man. Smooth.
So anyway, that other guy there is Larry Broughton, and I'm Dave Braun. He's
Yes,
my
you are.
friend, and we're working to HireMyVA and so many other things. We're so excited to be able to talk about this great subject today with you guys.
Hey, Dave. How are you, buddy? I love you. Glad we're here.
I'm doing well. It's my son's 34th birthday, and happy birthday, son.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, let's dive into this. You ready?
Yeah, I like this topic, by the way. So let's hear the question for everybody.
Okay. So it's kind of like two parts, right? Is as a leader in my organization, especially as CEO, how do I handle mistakes that my team makes? So that's kind of like part one. The other part is, well, how do I handle things when I make mistakes?
Yeah.
What say ye, Larry?
Well, it's very interesting. Just on, I did a quick social media post on this video a couple of years ago, and it just got reposted a few days ago. And let me start out with that. There are kind of a few elements just very quickly, and then we kind of maybe riff off of that. I think, Dave, the first thing is just we have to accept that mistakes are going to happen because we are dealing with humans, and we are humans. Yes. Mistakes are going to happen in business, right? And so we have to learn some tolerance around mistakes. The second thing I would say, and this has to do particularly for us, is that we have to develop a culture where team members, including ourselves, accept responsibility when they make a mistake. And again, we can riff on these after I kind of list these. The next thing is, once we've made the mistake and identified the mistake and hopefully even learned from the mistake, we have to jettison all the emotional baggage that goes with it. They say, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm always going to make these mistakes. That has to go out the flipping window. We got to jettison that and just say that's part of the past. It's not who I am today. I've learned from it and I'm moving forward. But the key to doing that, though, is we have to make sure, and this is the kind of number 4, is we have to understand why and how that mistake was made and then learn from it. But there are certainly some do's and don'ts about dealing with mistakes. We can get into that in a little bit, but we can start off the conversation with those 4 or 5 different things there. What do you think about that?
Oh,
good starting point?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, let me tell you a story what happened in my organization just recently.
Oh, okay.
So, pro website creators, we do web development and a few other things. And one of my team members, he did some updates on the site and it broke the site. And he was really mortified at what happened. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this again. So we talked about it beforehand. It's like I said, yeah, go ahead and do that. Just make sure you have a backup, right? In case something goes wrong, right? So I think that's an aspect of when you do things as a team member or as, in your organization yourself, is you understand what the potential consequences could be when you do make a mistake and have the backups there, right? So we had them. But there was something still that he was still really, really upset about it. And I was like, well, if it needs be, we can always recover. Right. And these things happen. You didn't do anything that was wrong. You did everything right. These things happen sometimes. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's an aspect of it that, as we talked about ahead of time, that there's some of the folks might internally be a little bit too, how do I say this, too not squeamish, but too scared to do stuff, or they're mortified if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen is, if we as leaders don't address that in our organization, no matter who it is, we're going to be really holding our organization back.
Well, listen, Dave, can I interrupt here for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
This program is not just about hiring a VA. This program is about how to help people become better leaders and better entrepreneurs so they can have more success with their VAs. We want people to have total freedom, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So this is a bigger a bigger issue. The truth is the insight that we're talking about here today, you're not going to hear in any other VA program. You're just not going to find it, right? So here's part of the problem though, and here's the great thing. If every person who's taking this program takes our entrepreneurial and leadership advice, and you and I have been named some of the top mentors in the country when it comes to entrepreneurship and leadership people, we have done this before. This is not our first rodeo. What we have found after mentoring at this point, clearly hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses, is that what we're talking about is unique. The reason that some of these team members are squeamish, I think was the word, is because most organizations don't tolerate mistakes.
Yes.
If you aren't making mistakes, you are not innovating. If you are not making mistakes, you are not pushing the envelope. You're not moving fast enough or getting close enough to your organization's fullest potential. Mistakes, as I said earlier, are going to happen. Yes. It's how do we respond to these mistakes and when our team members make mistakes. So in most organizations, people get the snot kicked out of them for making a mistake, right? Instead of saying, like doing an AAR, an after action review, to figure out the why and the how those mistakes were made and then to learn from them, that's the key here, right? But you have to have a culture that accepts mistake making, because when you get everybody to understand that, hey, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to make tons of mistakes, but we're going to get better each time, and we're going to be moving really fast, then people will kind of lean into it, and they'll start taking some mitigated risk, right? Because you got to identify what's the downside. Like, if I do this, am I not only going to knock this website down, but am I going to blow the server up, right? I would expect, like, let's not do those types of of mistakes. But the other key, Dave, is as a leader, we have to accept that there will be mistakes. What we shouldn't be accepting is the same mistake being made over and over again.
Yes.
That's the key, right? So if a team member or the organization keeps making the same mistake over again, you need to step back and have an honest evaluation of ourselves, and say, why is this happening? Because if you are not an organization that accepts mistakes, I'm sorry, let me put it another way. If you keep making mistakes, then you're not a learning organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me get even more detail. If you keep making the same mistake over and over again, then you're not a learning organization. So I think that's really important to understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And, as you're talking, I was thinking, when it comes to leading team members, there's so many parallels between leading our team members and raising kids, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, as a parent, Larry, raising my kids, like I said, my oldest is now 34, so they're kind of ready.
You've been doing this a while.
Yeah. But, we did our best to reserve the times when we actually yelled, when it was like, get out of the street because you can die, right?
Yeah, right.
Because otherwise, then they wouldn't listen to us if we kept yelling for little things. Oh, you spilled your milk. Oh my gosh, you're so stupid. How could you do that? Yeah. What a disaster. No, you don't do that. Yeah. So I think we've really got to make sure that we understand in our organization, what is the, you running out into the middle of the street and being in really, really danger, putting your clients in danger, putting, yourselves in danger, right? Versus, spilling a little milk or, a room being dirty, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Can I throw a few do's and don'ts out there that kind of come into my mind? For sure. That might help people. Yeah. Don't make assumptions that because someone made a mistake, they're stupid or they have a spirit of malice about the organization. Oftentimes that's not the case. So don't make assumptions. You got to go in with an open mind and ask questions. Why or how did this mistake happen? Don't let problems build up. Okay. Oftentimes I've seen this with managers who don't have a spirit of leaning into conflict, but they kind of lean back when conflict happens. But what happens if you do let the problem build up, then what happens? Resentment happens and you start getting passive aggressive or just your response tends to be disproportionate. So don't make assumptions. Don't let the problem build up. Don't show your bias, right? or I knew this was going to happen. If I would have done it, or if that man would have done it instead of that woman, or if that Caucasian person instead of that African-American person. Don't let your biases creep into this thing. Another don't be a wuss. Deal with problems head on. Okay. Mistakes head on. There's a saying down under that I've got a Australian, very good friend of mine. And he talks about giving people the crap filled lolly. Here in the States, we call it a crap sandwich, right? Right. So what am I talking about? What was that?
That sounds appealing.
Yeah, exactly. So what is that? Well, they say, if you got to give bad news, this is kind of like old school leadership, right? If you got to give bad news, sandwich it with something nice, right? I really like that you have a great sales approach. You are killing on sales approach, but you really blew it on this one. But I'm really glad that you're so good in sales, right? Here's the downside with that. We have a team member in our organization, Dave. I've shared with you in the past that when I have gone into her office at times to give her like a atta girl kudos, she gets really nervous. Why does she get nervous? Because at her former gig, anytime a supervisor came into her office to give her a piece of good news, she knew that the hammer was going to fall, that she must have screwed up on something else. You know what I mean? But when you constantly have a culture of catching people doing things all the time, their emotional bank account gets filled up so that you don't have to tiptoe around people when you have to give them bad news, because you've already got the emotional bank account filled up. Yeah. So that if you screw up, Dave, and I'm constantly giving you attaboys, I can come in and say, Dave, come on, you're better than this. This is a really simple mistake that should have been avoided. You know what I mean? And then your feelings aren't crushed by that. And so you can be much more direct, and they trust that you still love them. There's a book called The Speed of Trust.
Right.
That this is so important. When people trust that you've got your back, when they trust that they're not going to lose their job because they made a mistake, things move much more efficiently, and you build an organization that's filled with joy, right? So those are the don'ts. Don't make assumptions. Don't let the problem build up. What was the next one? Don't show your biases, and don't be a wuss. Sorry. Here's the other thing. So here's the do's. Do your homework. Yeah. Why and how did the mistake happen? Do consider the team member's track record of success or failures or mistakes, because sometimes if there is a team member that's making mistakes over and over and over again, what's their track record? That might be the same person who's highly innovating as well, right? And so you've got to really balance that out, right? The other thing is, do consider the impact on motivation, because sometimes people like this person I just mentioned, there may be some selective risk taking that's happening, right? And you want that in your organization. And I think finally, Dave, the last do I would say is, do be direct and respectful when you're addressing these things. I've seen bosses, I'm using that term intentionally, who have lost their freaking minds when mistakes have been made before. And I will tell you, I've done it too. I don't even say I've lost my mind, but I've raised my voice with team members before too, when we've made really stupid mistakes and done it over and over again. I say, we are better than this. We cannot accept this level of performance.
Yeah,
it's called righteous anger.
Yeah, right. And I've done it, and I know, as a leader, you're not going to be perfect in this, right? No. And I've done it before where it's like, oh man, I probably was too harsh in this situation, and one of the things that helps me is that at the end of it, I always back off and say, because as a leader, ultimate leader of the organization, you have to take responsibility for everything. And then it's like, guys, ultimately it's my responsibility because I haven't communicated well enough to you guys, or whatever it is, that this just isn't acceptable. Right?
Yeah.
So it really ends up being my fault.
Yeah.
The other thing that we didn't talk about it on this pre-show, but on the pre-show, but I was thinking about this is that, you and your organization, you do a lot in person, but not as much right now, of course.
Yeah.
But there's so much that goes on in the virtual world that's done by, Slack or texting or whatever. And but then we've got our Zoom meetings, right? So, I think it's great to give attaboys, attagirls, whatever you want to call it, virtually, but you got to make sure you do it verbally in Zoom meetings as well.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Too much gets lost in translation and text and emails.
Yes.
Right. But there shouldn't be any organization alive right now that has not gotten yet comfortable with doing video conferencing.
Correct.
All right. It's not as good as in person, but it is leaps and bounds and light years better than texting and emailing for sure. Because you can do this stuff. You can make eye contact, that you can see facial expressions, you can hear intonation in the voice, right? And we ought to be almost going overboard a little bit about catching people doing things right now.
Yeah, and you can, when you say going overboard, catching people doing things right, one of the things that we advocate, of course, in HireMyVA and is, at least a weekly team meeting. So as a leader, if you're leading this team meeting, make sure that you have on your normal agenda that you go ahead and have something in there and you give somebody, a kudos.
That's right.
Force yourself to do it so that until you get into the habit of doing it, you'll just need to schedule it in. Yeah,
Dave, I'm not sure when, whatever time of the year or life of your business that you're watching this video, we are recording this and we are still in a pandemic for COVID right now, but somebody may be viewing this 5 years later and you may have heard about COVID in your history lesson, but we are in what is considered a business crisis right now. And one of our mantras in our organization is the best communication during times of crisis is over communication. And that is particularly true when dealing with your team members.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And catching people doing things right and trying to inspire them towards greatness.
Yeah. And you really got to go overboard, especially even if it's not a pandemic, when you're watching this and you have a virtual team, you've really still got to go overboard on the communication virtually.
Yeah. Because, if you're in the same office with somebody, Dave, just a wink across the office or a thumbs up or we got this kind of thing throughout the day. You don't do that if somebody's working halfway around the world.
That's right. Yeah. You just can't. You can't.
So you have to, maybe a good word is intentional. You have to be intentional.
Yes.
About this, about building that emotional bank account that we were talking about earlier. It's much easier to correct mistakes when you've got an emotional bank account that people they know, love, and trust you, that they know that the feedback you're giving them is coming from a spirit of love and recognizing the potential in the organization and the potential in that specific team member, right? That you're not, quote unquote, correcting them because you're just an ass or that they are a failure, right? You're doing it because I love you. I want you to do better. The better you do, the better we do it as an organization, and then we all win.
And I think it goes the other way around too, because as leaders, we have to admit when we make mistakes.
Well, right? Dave, all of this is hollow and will be an absolute failure if we are expecting our team members to do one thing and we don't. If we can't admit to our team members when we've made a mistake, it's all going to be hollow and for naught. They won't believe you. They won't trust you. So when we make a mistake, Dave, we have to admit it and ask for I'm sorry. I hope you'll forgive me for it. And here's what I learned from it. By us doing that, it gives them permission. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
Keep going. No, keep going.
No, I was going to say that by us admitting, you're setting the example.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And, we advocate doing AARs, right?
Absolutely.
Well, you're not going to get a good AAR with you and your team working together if they don't feel like they can be honest with you.
Yes.
So this level of vulnerability, this, building up the emotional bank account both ways, admitting when you make a mistake, and it really has some long tentacles throughout your organization.
Sure does. Sure does. Yes.
So maybe this question is kind of like how to build an emotional bank account with your team, right? Within your organization.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's the subheading.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone a long time on this one. Any other thoughts?
No, I would just encourage people that this is one of those great topics that you can discuss in detail in the community forum. That is, I believe, although there's great resources in this and the teachings throughout HireMyVA is really powerful, and we're seeing people grow their businesses exponentially. Right now, I believe the most important part of this is the community forum. And if you have a question about this, put it there, and fellow tribe members will help you with this, and we can talk about it on our recurring calls as well.
All right. Yep. Definitely would love our community.
Yes.
All right.
Love
Folks,
our community. Yes.
Well, thank you folks for joining us today on this community call we've got going on. But remember, building a team is the way to reclaim your freedom. And Blair and I are here to help you. But 3 things we'd want you to do right now. We'd really appreciate it. Number 1, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so.
Yeah.
Number 2, give us a rating. And number 3, go to HireMyVA.com for more information on our course and community, our latest blog. There's all kinds of good information there. And remember, though, one of the important things for you guys to remember is that even without experience, you'll learn how to prepare for, hire, and thrive with virtual assistants and just leading your team, even if they're not virtual, if they're with you in person, you'll learn so much. The stuff we talked about today is totally applicable, virtual and non-virtual. So Larry and I would love to help you guys. We're helping people now, but just go to HireMyVA.com for more information.
Yep. I just want to remind you folks, do yourself a favor, do the world a favor, go do something significant today. All right, my friends, God bless you, God keep you, God hold you. All right, go get them.
All right, bye folks.